O hidden life vibrant in every atom, O hidden light shining in every creature, O hidden love embracing all in oneness, may each who feels himself as one with thee know he is also one with every other. Om Bhuvasvaha Om Tatsaviturvarenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi धियो यो नः प्रचोदयात् ॐ भूर्भुवस्वः ॐ तत्सवितुर्वरेण्यं भर्गो देवस्य धीमहि धियो यो नः प्रचोदयात् ॐ भूर्भुवस्वः ॐ तत्सवितुर्वरेण्यं भर्गो देवस्य धीमहि धियो यो नः प्रचोदयात् ॐ असतो मा सद्गमय तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमय मृत्योर्मा अमृतंगमय ॐ शांति शांति शांतिः. Binaji will start with the third and fourth.
Third and fourth, okay.
Third and fourth. They are together actually.
Okay. Yeah.
So
okay.
we will do them together.
Right.
Shall I read the original?
Yes, please.
ये त्वक्षरम् अनिर्देश्यम् अव्यक्तं पर्युपासते सर्वत्र गमचिन्त्यं च कूटस्थमचलं ध्रुवं सन्नियम्येन्द्रियग्रामं सर्वत्र समबुद्धयः ते प्राप्नुवन्ति मामेव सर्वभूतहिते रताः.
The translation. But those who seek after the immutable, indefinable, unmanifest, the omnipresent, unthinkable, self-poised, high above, immobile, ever the same, well controlling all their senses, having equal consciousness in regard to everything, everywhere, lovingly occupied with the good of all beings, they too attain to me. The commentary. No less than those who unite themselves with the divine in all ways of their existence, Sarva Bhavena, and enter. Sorry?
It is Sarva Bhavena.
Sarva Bhavena, and enter largely and fully into the unthinkable living fountainhead of universal things, Divyam Purusham Achintya Rupam. These seekers too, who climb through this more difficult exclusive oneness towards a relationless, unmanifest absolute, find in the end the same eternal.
Now this is question, response to the question of Arjuna as to which is better, worship God in his form, in that unmanifest form. And as I mentioned last time also, Sri Aurobindo makes out a very important point and says that the Gita envelops all of them in the same Jnana and Bhakti, envelops them all in its Catholic integrality and fuses them all into one greatest and richest divine freedom and perfection. This is the point we need to understand. See, essentially, they are not three different paths or three aspects or exclusive dimensions of the being. down below in manifestation, a particular aspect may predominate in one's own life. Obviously, when one is young, he is full of activity. When he grows up, his activity from physical will shift to mental. And when he grows old, activity shifts from the mental to the spiritual, to a higher dimension. So it is a question of the stage of life and stage of one's own evolution also. Somebody could be very spiritual in the sense he is otherworldly in his outlook at a very young age also. So there is no conflict between these three. That is another issue, another aspect which we need to understand very clearly. There is no conflict also. Aspect is brought out in the Bhagavad Gita in a very integral manner, and that's the reason why Sri Aurobindo calls it as the integral yoga also, because it integrates all aspects. The presence of the divine, if it is recognized in oneself, if that presence in oneself is recognized, then what happens is anything that is done will be in relation to that presence. Indian philosophy outlook of life is one where there is absolutely no place for evil per se. There is no evil per se. It is only the absence of wisdom. It is only the absence of knowledge. It is only the presence of what is called as avidya or the dark bands in a spectrum. They are dark bands in a spectrum. That is absence of light, absence of illumination, which causes one to act in a manner contrary to the very process of evolution, to the very nature of things. Consequences will also be of that nature. They are very much deeply involved in this ignorance, and therefore they act in a manner contrary to the whole process of evolution, whether physical, mental, moral, emotional, social, or spiritual or transcendental, whatever you may call it. Evolution is progressive, more and more opening itself up. Now, in this text, Krishna gives a reply. He says, those who seek me in the imperishable, immutable, indefinable, unmanifest form, Akshara, Anirdeshya, Avyakta, Sarvatra is omnipresent. Kutastha. Kutastha is translated here as self-poised. That means, and beautifully, Adi Shankara gives the illustration of the sky for this omnipresence. Omnipresent is like the sky. It is all pervasive. Important of all the senses, including the mind. Because whatever is in the field of the objective world and which thought can comprehend is within the known. is within the known. So many adjectives are used. And another aspect one needs to understand here is about Sanniyamyendriya Gramam. Unfortunately, the translation is one of control, controlling the senses and the mind and so on. It's not so much of control as it is of understanding. Controlling and suppressing and putting it down is a very negative approach to the senses, which has been terribly misunderstood. See, one comes to something through understanding, not through mere suppression or rejection or brushing it away and throwing it away. Jiddu Krishnamurti used to give a beautiful example. He would say, if there is a bottle on which the word poison is written very boldly, would you like to try that? Would you say, I'll just see whether it is truly poison or not, or how poisonous it is? Does it really kill me or not? Do you get into all these arguments about it? It is labeled as poison. So the very understanding of the fact that this is poison should lead to rejecting it. So when I say labeling, in this particular example, don't take it, don't expand it. The only idea is that the labeling is a question of recognition. You see, when I say as an example that poison is written, somebody has written it, isn't it? So I can, in such a case, I can question whether that fellow, somebody really knows it to be poison or not. I can question it. But it's not about that kind of argument. The argument here is that you know that it is poisonous. Your understanding of the fact that it is poisonous would immediately lead to an action whereby you are rejecting it. So the control of the senses also actually means that when you see the consequences of your actions, when you see the nature of that object of sense, when you see the impermanence of it, when you see the futility of pursuing it, when you see the dangerous consequences which ensue the pursuit of the objects of senses. So that is why it is required that you approach it in a very integral manner, in a total, in a holistic manner. You have to approach it with total attention to it. Then the question of control doesn't arise. The aspect of control, it's only figurative and given in the speech form or expression form. The true meaning is that you understand the nature of it. Once you understand the nature of it, obviously, if you truly understand that too, it's not a superficial understanding again. When you truly understand the nature of it, you would not indulge in it. And here, it is the whole system of the senses. It's not talking about one sense, one particular sense or one particular thing. The mind is also included here. Indriya Gramam. Indriya Gramam means the collection of all the senses together. And Samabuddhayaha, in a state of equanimity, in a state of, where you are having a, here if you to use consciousness. Yes. Be aware of the whole process. And everything everywhere. Sarvatra. This equal consciousness is something which is in everything and everywhere. It is all inclusive. And the whole inner attitude, of the person should be one of love and compassion to everything in manifestation. Sarva bhuta hite rataha. You have the welfare of all beings. You are totally occupied and involved in the welfare of all the beings. No exclusion. If you remember what I mentioned earlier, one of the statements I made was that if there is an iota, even an iota of hatred in a person, there is absolutely no space for love and compassion. That small iota of hatred would occupy one's entire consciousness. See the danger of it. Why is it important that we do not carry hatred, jealousy, envy, grudge, greed? Well, you can give hundreds of names to it. It's not the nomenclature that is important. It is the sense which prevails in us through some kind of inadequacy. In that, even if an iota of it is there, an iota of hatred is sufficient to poison the entire consciousness, occupy and poison the entire consciousness, and will not permit the entry of love and compassion into that heart. It's a great fallacy, it's a great illusion to think that I love my family, I love my friends, I love my country, I love everything, but I hate somebody. Which is a total contradiction. So the whole being has to be pervaded by this. When he says Sarva Bhuta Hite Rataha, these are all in one way the prerequisites to approach that ultimate reality in its immutable and unmanifest form. Unless this pervasive consciousness of the welfare of every being is there, there is no way to approach at all. We have actually closed all means of approach to that ultimate reality. Not talking about a path. The very approach to it is blocked. That is the reason why, again, coming to one of the important statements of Jiddu Krishnamurti, he makes a very profound statement and says, where there is love, there is no forgiveness. You know, forgiveness is an attitudinal problem. I have been injured and I am forgiving you. So what is important here? I am important, and the recognition of the fact that I have been injured, they are important to me. And you take a holier than thou attitude and say, I forgive you. It could be out of weakness because you can't do anything, you can forgive him, isn't it? If there's a very powerful man and he has harmed you, what can you do? You are absolutely incapable of doing anything, and then you may say, I have forgiven him, which is nonsense. If you had same kind of power, you might have killed him. You might have destroyed him and his family and all that. So forgiveness is not to be recognized as a virtue. It is a negative virtue. So what is important is to be the aspect of love and compassion to pervade your consciousness, whereby you have no issue of forgiving anybody because you understand the whole situation. You understand the state of ignorance the person is in. And you understand why he has acted in that manner because you know the background of it. And you wish his welfare also. You see the point? See, we miss out most of these things through a casual reading. That is why he says, no less than those who unite themselves with the divine in all ways of their existence, sarva bhavena, and enter largely and fully into the unthinkable living fountain of universal things, divyam, purusham, achintya rupam. These seekers too, who climb through this more difficult, exclusive oneness towards a relationless, unmanifest absolute, find in the end the same eternal. Same eternal principle is there, whether manifest or unmanifest. See, what is actually to be done? This has always been a problem from the spiritual perspective and for those who are called as seekers. The very term seekers is a misnomer. What is it that you are seeking? And with which faculty are you seeking? What are the faculties that are available to you? All the faculties that are available to you are in the realm of illusion, are in the realm of limitation. They are partial, they are fragmented. So what do you seek from that point? You really cannot seek anything as such. If you are talking about something which is beyond the senses and the mind. So it is basically a question of allowing that space for unfolding and flowering. That is the beauty of it. You are allowing the space. And where is that space? That space is in the inner silence of one's own being. When the chattering of the mind stops, knowing its own limitation, knowing its own futility of exerting itself, when that chattering stops, you are providing that space of silence. In that space of silence, there is an unfoldment of consciousness. That means a greater and greater and a higher dimension of that consciousness is being allowed to flow through that silence. Then what happens? Then you recognize the beauty of it. Recognize the beauty in the sense You are one with that. It's not as though it is separate from you and you are recognizing it. That is the immutable. That is the imperishable. That is the indefinable. That is the omnipresent, unthinkable. That which is ever the same, eternal. So it is more a question of not doing anything. Recognizing the fact that doing of anything is going to be a hindrance, is going to be a serious impediment. It is more a question of dropping the baggage. You know, the etymological meaning in Christian theology, the term impedimenta means baggage. It's the burden which we carry. So it is a case of unburdening. It is a case of unlearning. It is more a case of not doing anything. That fact has to be recognized. Whether we are acting in this world and worshipping the manifest, or we are trying to, or we are, again, unfortunately, we have to use the language. If you are the so-called seeking of the unmanifest, it is a simple case of not allowing the senses and the mind to operate in a field in which they have absolutely no business to operate. That is the secret behind it. And as I said, this becomes a prerequisite. What are the prerequisites? Samabuddhayaha. One who is poised, whose cognition of the oneness and the sameness at all times, being equipoised in awareness, then sarvabhuta hite rataha, whose whole being is pervaded by that sense of the welfare of all beings, and who are firmly established, who are immobile, who cannot be moved by anything. Nothing external can waver their attention and cause any disturbance, thereby leading to any kind of action from their side. This is what is required. Unless we see this, whether it is the manifest or the unmanifest or whatever it is, we will have the same problem. Why is it that there is no progress from a spiritual point of view? It's a very serious question. The greatest of the saints and sages have raised this question. Study, meditation, service, all has been done. But still it doesn't happen. Why? Because there is that element of what I would call as a kind of a blemish in the character of the being. There is something which is still sticking on. A black spot somewhere. So what happens? Whatever you do, nothing can happen. As I said, the SMS of study, meditation, and service. If you see, this is what all the seekers have always done. Studying the scriptures, deep studying, and then meditating on those truths. Then being engaged in the service of humanity. But still it doesn't happen. So therefore it is that aspect of cleansing, Atma Shuddhi, which all action should lead to. All action should lead to greater and greater Atma Shuddhi, self-purification. So that nothing sticks to the self. Because there is no self. The self is an artificially contrived mechanism for survive the embodied consciousness. When one is beyond the survival instinct, the self becomes a hindrance. It is like not removing the scaffolding after the construction of the house. I have constructed the house, laid the roof, everything, but I don't remove the scaffolding. Then the whole place becomes, you can't dwell in it, you can't live in it. It doesn't serve the purpose for which the construction has been done. The self is more the problem. That is why we again depend on grace. But it has been made very, very clear that grace will descend on those who are prepared to receive it, find themselves to receive it. The qualification, or as I said, the pre-qualifications are these. So unless that happens, we are stuck here for eternity. So it's a very serious matter. It's not an ordinary thing. That's why, see, it appears to be sort of because we have never understood the true nature of that divinity or that ultimate reality which we are talking about. There is a chat here. Veena-ji says, 3 qualities of readiness to embrace the unmanifest, senses under control. Control, I told you, I am not very happy with the word control. I would rather put it as understanding the whole nature of all the senses as a collective.
Okay.
And the state of equanimity. And being, it's not a question of service, it's more a question of being in a state of consciousness, state of awareness where the only concern is the welfare of all beings. There is a slight difference. Service is a consequence of that awareness. First of all, that awareness should be there.
Right.
First aspect is that awareness should be there. Once that awareness is there, then whatever action you do, totality for the welfare of humanity. That's what the Bhagavad Gita calls as Loka Sangraha.
Okay.
The great, the actions of all great sages and saints is Loka Sangraha. Is only for the integration and welfare of the whole of creation, whole of manifestation.
Got it.
Again, I want to remind you about the importance of the actor being right. according to Professor Ravi Ravindra. He would say,
Yeah.
it's important
action
the
will-
actor should be right. Then every action of that actor will be right.
Correct.
Then we need not even question or think of the nature of one's action. It is bound to be right because the actor is right.
Correct.
So that is the aspect of it. That's the important aspect. See, a superficial reading would say, would give us an impression that okay, he's saying that if somebody wants to do this, these are some of the aspects he is talking about. No, but there's a tremendous seriousness in the whole thing. The fact of the matter is, I am not serious. I have not understood the import of the words used. The deeper meaning of these words is lost on me. I do not know how to proceed also, because as I said, anything I do is out of that limitation, out of that avidya or ajnana. So it is bound to be wrong. It is bound to be limited. It is bound to be partial. It is bound to be fragmented. So that is what is important for us.
Sarji,
Yes,
we
sir.
talked about purification. In context, it is said that the mind and senses, you can never purify 100%. It will be always deficient.
No, cannot be purified through action. You have to understand the difference. The senses and the mind, by their very nature, are in a state of ignorance, acting in that field. So, any action emanating from them is going to be defective. So, it is not a question of action. You again, please recall, the very statement of Sri Adi Shankara is Atma Vichara.
Yes.
It is only through Atma Vichara. It is only through the understanding of the nature of the self that you will transcend the self. You understand the point, sir?
Yes, sir. I mean, still, but the point still remains that however much you try, you can never purify the mind and.
Sir, never purify in the sense, if you are operating in a higher dimension, then they will be under your guidance and your protection, and therefore you can use them as an instrument. But if the instrument is filled with dirt, if the instrument is covered with dust, you can't help it. See, the light of that consciousness, that illumination of buddhi, has to fall on this mind. Then it will recognize its own impurity, so that it will not get further sullied. See, a very beautiful statement is there by H.P. Blavatsky. She says the mind is like a mirror. It gathers dust as it reflects. You can't help it. The mind will gather dust like the mirror. As it reflects, as it operates, it gathers dust. So what to do? Clean it every time. Cleaning it. Go on cleaning it. Cleaning in the sense, don't use it for purposes for which it is not meant. Mind has a very limited, useful purpose of operating in a certain field of activity. Now, if I use it for human relations, if I use it psychologically, and if I use it for my emotions, if I use it for my safety and security, if I use it for purposes for which it is not meant, it is going to create confusion and conflict and contradiction.
Yes.
So it is a question of understanding the nature of the mind.
Very true.
So that is the problem. They never talked about purification of the mind. It is purification of the self itself. It is not manashuddhi, it is atma shuddhi.
Yes.
The self, when it is caught up in limitation, becomes mind, operates as mind, because that is the predominant factor in us. When you recognize that there is a principle higher than the mind, then you start operating from that level. You understand the point, sir?
Very true, sir.
So don't try to go on purifying the mind, purifying the senses of the end. The mind has no end to it. It will not happen. You have to understand the nature of it and not allow it to, drag you into its fold.
We don't purify the mind. We have to just drop it, right?
Yeah, in a way, you understand the limitation of it and allow it to function only in the field in which it is useful.
Correct.
You have to go back home.
Yeah.
I have to recognize my own home, my wife and children, and whatever activity is available. If I go driving, I should remember driving.
Yeah.
It's used for that purpose.
So, would it mean, understanding and perceiving a super soul within the individual soul for the purpose of controlling the senses?
Yeah, can you repeat again, sir?
Now, there's a soul, all right. What do you mean is, what I meant was that perceiving a super soul or a supreme soul or supreme entity to control the soul, to control further the senses of sensory objects and things like this.
We are putting the cart before the horse. Sir, the assumption of a super soul, an atma, a paramatma, an ultimate reality is still an assumption only. It's not a reality for us, isn't it? The reality for us is the senses and the mind through which we operate. The point I am trying to make is, do you recognize the limitation of these senses and the mind? So the understanding of the limitation and the nature of the senses and the mind, through that understanding, through that very understanding, a dimension will be unfolded of a truth beyond these things. Then you come to it. See, we are, unfortunately, as I said right from the beginning, we are using these words because we have no other means of communication. And somebody has talked about the imperishable, unmanifest, unthinkable, and all kinds of negative terms. Actually, do they convey any meaning, sir? Let us talk very frankly. Do they convey any depth to us? All these negative terms, unmanifest, unthinkable, unimaginable, and he has used several of them. They don't really convey anything to us. They only convey the fact that it is beyond the mind, which I don't know. So my whole thing should start with my whole aspect. My whole thing should start with the known. The known is my own senses, and the reality, the so-called reality which the senses perceive, and the faculty of reasoning, which is mind, which includes experiences, knowledge, memory, and all that. Now we can do a small test whereby we know the limitation of it. Our eyes have a limitation, which can be clearly understood when somebody gives you a magnifying glass.
Sir,
Yes,
Krishnappa
sir.
ji. There is one thing I want to ask.
Can you wait for a minute, sir? Let me
Okay, sir.
complete what
Okay, sir. Okay.
Subbarao ji is asking. Okay. Now, see what I'm saying is, my eyes have a vision. Is it complete, or is it comprehensive? Is it is it something which is which can be said to be all perceiving and unlimited? No. You bring a magnifying lens, you see that your eye could not see, naked eye could not see, that is being shown. You bring a microscope, you can see much more. You bring a telescope, you can see much more. So the eyes have a limitation, the ears have a limitation. What the dogs can hear, I cannot hear. What the dog can smell, I cannot smell. So all my senses are limited. So any information gathered by the senses can only be partial, limited, fragmented. And what is the mind? The mind only operates through this information fed into it, the inputs given by the senses. So by definition, the mind is very limited. So the very perception of that limitation in its totality, not bits and pieces, in its totality, the very perception of the nature of the senses and the mind will open a dimension beyond itself, which leads to what I called as unfolding or flowering. So you are not doing anything. You are only coming to the understanding of the very limitation of this. And that understanding should be complete. Again, for that you require this total attention. Then what comes, let us see whatever comes. Somebody has named it, but that is of no consequence to us because he has named it in negative terms. So that doesn't really help us. So it's not a question of control again, sir. Somebody taking over control from here to there or anything. It's only a question of a deep understanding of the very nature and the very essence of the things in which we are operating, the field of our operation. Okay, sir? Thank you, sir. Krishnamurthy avaru, ಹೇಳ್ರಿ. You can unmute yourself and speak. Yes.
Hello, sir.
What is your question?
Regarding this controlling of mind and senses, you said about that one.
No, I did not say control. Please understand again. I am not happy with the word control.
What is
It's
that?
not control. I just clarified the point raised by Subbarao ji that it is not a question of control. It is a question of understanding the nature and limitations of the senses and the mind.
Okay, take it. That's why only we can talk.
No.
Sir, regarding in that way, can we say that we should always living in present. We should not brood over the past, nor think about the future. As you said, driving only you drive. Think about the drive. That is all. You need not think otherwise. So if we always live in the present, then we can, as you say, we can
The
avoid
question is, sir, the more important question is, theoretically what you said is correct. But I am not talking theory. Are we living in the present?
That is our effort should be.
Then what? No effort. There is no effort. To live in the present, you don't require effort.
That is correct.
You require effort to live in the past,
Yes.
and the mind is used to making
yes.
effort and living in the past or the future.
Yes, perfectly.
To live in the present, you don't require any effort. You need to just live.
Just live in the present, that's all.
No, don't say that's all. That's not happening to me. My problem is that,
Acha.
sir, Krishnamurti Gargi, for you it may be okay, but it's not happening to me. What should I do? That's why I said don't do anything.
Acha.
Okay, sir?
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
And also,
Sir, yes.
Yes, sir.
A small question or clarification.
Yes, sir.
I am getting a feeling that we should have true understanding of pure consciousness as the self and see pure consciousness in everybody. And we should be Sarva Bhuta Hiterata. So that should be our goal.
No, again you are.
Then in that
No,
case,
no,
we will be away from
Sir,
this
sir.
senses.
Sir. Who is creating the goal?
Once we understand pure consciousness as
No,
the self,
no,
the goal
you
is
need not do anything. Once you understand, you need not do anything.
Not
See, it is the
required.
mind
Agreed,
which
sir.
is.
Totally agree, sir.
So the mind
That
is
is-
misleading you to create a goal.
That is true.
Right.
We should be away from this. We should come to
So
self.
don't do it. No. Don't
Yes.
do anything.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Total observation of the present, what is. You're not dependent on any theory, any book, anybody in any manner whatsoever. You're looking at what is, what are you, what am I? If there is something in me, I am that something. So I cannot do anything about it because, see, if you are caught in a sphere, see, if there is a iron sphere and I am inside it, what
So-
effort should I do to come out of that sphere? No effort. You are caught in
Yes.
that. So any kind of effort within that field is not going to lead anywhere. You'll be going round and round here and there in circles in the sphere. The fact that you are stuck in the sphere, if you understand it fully, there is a possibility of that sphere, coming out of it or splitting, and you are seeing something beyond it. Any action within the sphere, within the field of the known, will never lead you to the unknown. That is the point I am trying to make.
Yes, sir.
If you don't do anything, you are at least creating that space, you are at least creating that silence to operate. Understand, sir?
Yes, sir. Thank
So
you.
it's only a question of understanding it at a very deeper level. Very deep in the sense we are used to superficial analysis of things and superficial understanding of things, which is not going to help, because we need to bring that tremendous energy which the mind doesn't want to do it. It's comfortable in its zone, so it won't do it. Unless you are shaken from inside, not outside again. An outside event could be a trigger in certain cases, but the shaking, the entire disruption should come from within. That is the point. See, the only things are again seriousness. Unless you are, see, there are three things. See, we normally use it, sensitivity. Becoming more and more sensitive to everything without choice. I'll be sensitive only to the good and insensitive to what I consider as bad or evil, or that won't help. It's only sensitivity is number one. Then intensity. How intense are you? That is the seriousness which I have been talking. And the third thing is urgency. Is it really urgent for me? Do I require it now and here immediately? Why I always bring in the dimensions which have been given by Jiddu Krishnamurti is that in the 20th century, you cannot find anybody who has shattered all myths. Everything, he said, throw away everything. When he was talking, when somebody used to quote Bhagavad Gita or Upanishads, he says, sir, did it help you? Did it really help you? Not cosmetic changes. Yes, sir, it has helped me to become somewhat calm. I was very agitated. I was used to get angry earlier very frequently. Now, that's all cosmetic change. He's not talking about that kind of help. Has it helped you to transform yourself totally? Why is it that it doesn't happen? Because we are not sensitive. We do not have that intensity and that urgency for transformation. The moment you have that, you will not ask anybody. Anything and everything else becomes irrelevant. Once we are sensitive to life, then you are sensitive to everything. And that brings about an intensity to understand it comprehensively, completely, totally, choicelessly. That intensity comes when there is that urgency for change in us. That is what he is talking about. Nothing should move you. Nothing external should disturb you. Kutastha. And that's where he says you are equipoised. You see everything choicelessly. And you have touched that source of love and compassion. Then the unmanifest, immutable, imperishable, whatever names you give or negative terms you give, is known to you, is revealed to you. You in the sense, again, that's a misnomer. You become that. That's why the Upanishadic statement, Brahmavid Brahmaiva Bhavati. The knower of Brahman becomes Brahman, which doesn't happen with anything else in the world. A physicist will not become physics. A chemist will not become chemistry. A biologist will not become biology. But a knower of Brahman will become Brahman. Brahmavid Brahmaiva Bhavati. He becomes that. That is the beauty of this transcendent reality. Okay, sir? Any further questions or shall we stop here?
Sir?
Yes?
Sir,
Yes?
one thing I want to know. This regarding Sunday lectures, it is not coming.
We have not yet decided.
Ah,
We have not yet decided what topic to take up and all that. It may take some time. We will let you know. Okay?
okay, sir. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anything else?
Sarji,
Umesh ji? Yes, sir. Ramchandran ji. Tell sir.
Upanishad, we see like Brahmavit Apnodi Param is the famous statement in Upanishad. We keep reading it again and again for years and years, but still things are not happening.
Nothing will happen. I told you, nothing will happen. You take it from me, I'll give you $1 million guarantee also, nothing will happen. Unfoldment has to begin within. That's why I said, are we sensitive to everything? do we have that sense of resonating, vibrating, pulsating with that oneness of life? Whether it is good, bad, ugly, cruel, whatever it is. Because it is we. We are not different from the whole manifestation. We are a microcosm of that macrocosm. So becoming sensitive to it. See, this is again, as I said, these are the, this is one 3-word mantra of Jiddu Krishnamurti. Sensitivity, intensity, and urgency. So that's where it has to start. If I am gross, if I am crude, I have to recognize that crudity in me. That very understanding of that crudity in me can bring about sensitivity. But if I brush it away and say, no, I am not crude, sir, I am refined, I am good, I am not that bad. If the mind starts justifying, accepting, rejecting, condemning, explaining and all that, then it is lost. That is the seeing the what is important. Okay, sir?
Thank
Yes,
you.
sir. Umesh,
I'm contemplating or thinking on one point, and I will continue thinking on it.
yeah. No, you want to tell us what that point is?
About what you said
Your voice is breaking.
today.
Your voice is breaking. Maybe you switch off your video. Switch off your video. Yes. Yeah, better now.
Is this better? Is this better? Purification. What my thinking is, or what I'm struggling to understand is, the self per se is pure.
Yes.
So there is no question of purification.
No,
At this frequency,
the level at which you recognize self is important.
Correct. So at this level, at this frequency where we are right now,
yes,
is self embodied with body and mind and intelligence.
Right.
And those faculties have to be understood in its own faculty, nature of the faculty, and transcend.
Yes.
Now,
So
when we transcend, who is the knower of transcendence? It is again the mind.
Who is asking this question now? So
that's the point. At this point of time, in all of us, we operate on a level of mind and buddhi.
Yes. So as long as you operate in that, all these kind of nonsensical questions will come up. See, first of all, recognize one simple fact, sir. If you are happy, if you are totally happy, are you aware of yourself at that point of time?
No.
Or will you ask, who gave me this happiness? Where has it come from? Where can I get more of it? Do you think of all these things?
No.
The thinker is not there. When the thinker is not there, the thought is not there. Because the thought is not different from the thinker. So the problem is that within the framework of the mind, if you ask any number of questions, I have only one answer. Is to find out what is happening actually. What is how these senses and mind are operating? We have to examine that. Then in that examination, you will come to your own conclusion about their own limitation and futility, and that should lead you to that inner silence. And what happens in that inner silence is nobody's business, because there is no one to question and no one to answer.
So my question, sir, is when you come to a point when you have this what we call inner silence, whereby you have the affirmation of that you are not body, mind, intelligence, and what it is, whatever it is what it is. So isness is the crux of the matter. When you are in that mode, let's say you are in peace, you are at such a level and mode of peace. But who is the knower of that peace? Who recognizes that peace?
See, why do you want to know that?
But the
See, why do you want to know that?
experiencer of that peace.
Why do you want to know that? You are putting that question from the mind.
Correct.
So the mind becomes the knower at that point of time. The mind becomes something else beyond the mind, and that becomes the knower. How does it matter to you? Because you are identifying yourself as a separate entity, all these issues are coming about. See, that's why they give all kinds of answers which only satisfy superficially. You become the ocean. Now you are a drop, you become the ocean. Now what happens to the drop? All these analogies have a limitation of their own.
Correct. It's all work of the mind.
Yeah.
So the point is to go from mindfulness to mindlessness is again a game of a mind.
Sir, all are games of the mind only.
So how do you transcend?
Shut up.
So when you shut up, when you are in that, let's say,
no further questions. When I say shut up, shut up. Don't ask any questions further. If you ask again, I'll say this. Sorry, I'm not trying to be rude, but I'm trying to say to myself.
True.
See,
so I'm asking myself that when I'm in the mode of shut up and I'm maintaining that for a while, whatever that I experience, whatever emotions or feelings comes, where does it exist? It exists in my mind.
So ask that to be shut up again. Anything is coming, shut up. Anything more, shut up. Because of the futility. See, when you know that it cannot answer you, why are you asking all kinds of questions? Do you know that first of all, that the answer is not here or in this field? Within the field of the known, you cannot find the answer for the unknown. So only thing is to create that space of silence.
Okay. So
which happens effortlessly when the mind knows its own futility.
So that's the abhyas, that you remain in that mode of shut up or silence, and that's it.
I am not interested in putting any label on it, any naming of it. I am not interested in anything. The moment you say that, you are allowing the mind to become active. The moment you are saying something, the mind is chattering. And a chattering mind can never know silence. All this discussion they should work as building up to that escape velocity. We have to build up ourselves to that escape velocity. Only to that extent, all this study is important. As Adi Shankara himself says, Jnana is for removing of ajnana, not for finding the transcendental truth, because there is nothing to find. It is already there. You are not creating it. Jnana is for removal of ajnana. All understanding is for removing misunderstanding or the limitation. That's the only thing it serves the purpose. Beyond that, it doesn't serve any purpose, because once that is removed, see what will happen, sir, if I open the doors and windows? You first open it. Then let us see whether light comes or wind comes or air comes, fragrance comes or what comes. See, we have shut the doors, and we are not opening them and then going on imagining what is outside. Your knowledge, all your wisdom, all your study, all your scripture should lead you to the door to open it. That's all. Okay, sir.
Yes. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much. So, shall we close it? Right?
Yes, Krishna.
Yeah.
Let's see who is there to sing.
I'll do this. Loka Samastha.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. For today, thank you.
ब्राह्मणेभ्यः शुभमस्तु नित्यं, लोकाः समस्ताः सुखिनो भवन्तु, लोकाः समस्ताः सुखिनो भवन्तु, लोकाः समस्ताः सुखिनो भवन्तु. ओम शांति शांति शांति. ओम तत्सत् ब्रह्मार्पणमस्तु. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you all for being here.